Welcome to
You Matter.
In Business.
Your hosts today are Ariel and Miriam. Your brand, your story, and your success.
Because you matter in your business. All right, welcome back. We are going to have our special guest, Deanna Hins. I'm a murderer of last names, so I'm going to just say that because I did that one good, actually, so I'm impressed. Anyway, Deanna has joined us last episode, and she shared with us a lot of the emotional struggles and some of the challenges that women entrepreneurs face, and how marketing is a very complex machine, and how there's so many moving parts. That she offers mentorship and shares that. So welcome with us. Welcome, Deanna.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me back. This is great. I love it. You guys are wonderful.
And hi, Miriam, too, by the way.
Hi.
My cohort is still here.
I'm still here. Still here.
Okay, so I have a couple questions for you this week. We want to talk a little bit more about some of the things that a lot of business owners might not be aware of, but they're very powerful on a website, in their social media. So we're going to start with, what advice do you give to women who hesitate about putting themselves front and center or being the brand of their business website and other marketing?
And
she chuckles.
You just open up with a good question, but that's such a relatable question, because a lot of times they don't want to be the face. They're afraid to be the face, right? And so if you have a business and you are the brand, you need to show up. And I get it. It's scary. I know. I understand that, right? Because we're like, what if people judge us? And I literally stopped showing up because of one person, not even a group.
Oh, wow.
Like, there was a time, there was one person. I'm like, if I put myself out there and say this one person is going to judge, have something to say. So I don't want them to see it, but I have to make it public. So instead of me just ignoring the one person, I'm just not going to do it, right? And it sounds so silly when you say it out loud, but that was my reality at some point. It was a fear of showing up because of one person. But a lot of times it's a fear of, what will people think? Because all of a sudden I'm over here talking about digital marketing and they're thinking, like, what makes you the expert?
Yeah.
Who told you that you could talk about this? So if you're feeling anything like that and you've got a business and those thoughts or any thought that's going through your head is stopping you, what I would recommend is just show up anyhow. Force yourself and baby step it, right? So if you're not comfortable putting your face on camera, maybe to start, don't show your face. Maybe to start, just take a short video clip, right? We call it B-roll. Create some B-roll of something around you. If you're cooking, right? Just show what you're making. Have your camera over the food and what you're mixing, and then the end product. Don't show you. Or if you work on your laptop, show something around, give a glimpse of you, but still share and tell people like what you're doing. But then gradually know that you're going to show yourself. And here's the fun part. And I don't know if you guys remember this. I think it was actually in England. So Miriam, you may remember this. Do you remember the guy who he was on like BCC? He did something. It was a very serious interview and he was in his bedroom, but it looked like there was a bookshelf behind him. And then while he's doing this interview, this little girl came in, his daughter came in.
Yes, I remember it well. Yeah. During the pandemic. Yeah.
It was during the pandemic. Yeah. I use him as an example all the time, because what happened? He probably wanted to die in that moment, and then his wife was pulling her pants up. She must have been going to the bathroom or something to grab the kid with the kid on. He probably just wanted to curl up like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening to me. Like, right. But did we not all fall in love with him because we're like, oh my gosh, I get it. Like, I know what that feels like. That's our life right now. Right. So what we learned from this guy who turned into like a viral meme is that people want authenticity. And if you screw up, if you mess up, it's okay, because a lot of times they actually connect with you more because it's not so polished. Like, they hear you. You're like, okay, that is me. I am feeling that. Like, I do have my kids running into the room in the middle of a meeting. I know what that feels like to try to act professional. And you're like, wait, but stop. So just do it anyhow. And don't be afraid. Like, nobody is going to hate you over that. They're going to probably embrace you a little bit more if you mess up.
I think,
Yeah.
but you're absolutely right. But people connect to you on a human level if they know that you have been through the same things that they're going through. I mean, we talked in the last episode a little bit about imposter syndrome. If people know that you too have suffered from it, but have overcome it, if you've got the skills to be able to overcome it in some way, they can then feel, oh, actually, she's got some credibility. She knows what she's talking about. So it is about being yourself as well, isn't it? But that fear, as you're talking about putting yourself out there and being the brand. And it's interesting that you got stopped by just one person, though, isn't that? Isn't that?
Right?
Yeah,
but I didn't realize that. Here's the funny thing: at the time, I didn't know that. I didn't realize it was one person until just recently. And I was reflecting on what stops people. And I started thinking about my own experience, right? And of course, we all have this fear of being judged. So that was part of it. But then I started thinking, and I'm like, wait a minute. It wasn't even a fear of being judged by a group of people. Like, I remember a time when it was one person who I was afraid was going to judge me and look at me and say, well, what does she know? Who does she think she is, going live on Facebook and talking about this? Like, right? And it was really just this one person that stopped me, but I didn't know it in the moment.
She never became a customer of yours or a client of yours, did she?
Say that again.
She never became a client of yours.
I don't think we're friends, honestly. I think at that time,
I just wondered if you
friends. We're not friends now. And at that time, we really weren't friends. Isn't that make it worse? It wasn't even like somebody that I liked or respected their opinion. No. I don't know where that person is right now, and that's okay, right? But yeah, it wasn't even somebody whose opinion I respected, but I must have on some level because I allowed it to stop me.
Yeah.
You bring up a really good point. I think the authenticity, I think there's a blur in a lot of people's minds when you talk about branding and being authentic, and there's sharing who you are and your values. Your ideal client is who you're sharing that to. Your ideal client is going to relate to you personally. So that's the reason why we're doing this, is to attract our ideal clients. So they see the human that they're going to work with. So they begin to know, like, and trust, and then they'll come and work with you. So those things are the human side of us is actually what draws other people that we want to draw to us. And it also repels those that we're really glad didn't call us.
You're right. And I'm so glad you shared that, because as you're talking, I was thinking, yes, I remember a time, and this actually helped me get past that. And I wouldn't have remembered until you just said that, is that I do believe that we all have gifts. And I know we probably have heard this before, right? But when we don't share that, we're actually hurting somebody who needs to hear it. So it's
true.
Right. So stop being selfish and share, because somebody who's listening really could use that advice right now, can really use that tip right now. And you're withholding it because you're afraid of one person or being judged, right? For me, it was one person.
Fear is a number one beast in all different, it comes in multiple layers. Fear of rejection, fear of being judged, fear of being found out as a fake. Those are all fears. So it's learning to quiet the fears and do it anyway.
Yeah,
absolutely. I love it.
So what kind of going off this, it leaps into an even deeper level when you're helping a client, specifically a woman client, and you're developing their About Me page. Because a lot of websites will have, obviously the services, but they'll have a little bit about the owner or the corporation or whatever, right? So there's that About Me or About Us. This is one of the struggles that I see, is that's like the hardest one for them to do, because they have to then present themselves as the authority, as the, and they're feeling all those fears, and they try to shy away from this, and they talk about the fact that they like cats and dogs and all the the non-important things. So how do you help women with this particular struggle?
So, that's funny that you say that, because I even noticed that people will talk about their cats and dogs and stuff on their social media profile, business profile, right? And it's like, nobody cares. So you have to think about, right?
That's hard.
It's so harsh. But the reality is you're a business now, share that on your personal stuff, but on your business, you have to know your ideal client. And we did talk about this last week a little bit. You have to know what their pain is and what solution they want and how you solve it. And that's what they want to see, right? So on that about me, it's like, what makes you credible to help them? And, have you gone through it before? Like, how did you end up here? Did you go through this before? Did you go to school? Are you certified? Do you have a degree? Like, what have you sold, 10 million books? Like, what makes you credible? And talk about it. And why that's so hard is because we've all been taught, like, don't brag, be humble, don't brag. So to step out of that, it feels very braggy, right? Like, you're like, I don't like saying this because I was taught to not brag. And now I'm over here talking about everything I did that was great. But you need to talk about everything that you did that was great, so that somebody else, your ideal client, not just anybody, but your ideal client, can connect with you, see that, relate to you, right? And that personal story. And some pieces, so I did make the comment about the cat and the dog, right? But there may, if you are doing something with animals, by all means, answer that and talk about that, right? So there may be some personal things that fit what you're doing today that makes sense to include it. But if you're a digital marketer, I may put something about my dog Biggie, because he is usually sitting right at the desk with me and helping me, right? And that's a little bit of a personal aspect. Like, I call him my other employee who's totally lazy and doesn't do anything. And a lot of times on podcasts, I'm looking around, because if he hears me talking, he's usually like right up on my lap. He's a Chihuahua. And he's like, wait, I want to be part of this meeting too. Like, what are you doing? Who are you talking to? But he's not right now. So if I include him, it's that personal element touch. But I also explain what he has to do in my business, right? He's always in my office with me as I work through the week, and he's my laziest employee.
Excellent. I find that you mentioned a couple of very good points, but I find that a lot of times there's such a difference, and we know it when we see it, but there's such a difference between telling people about our credentials and bragging, right? There's a clear difference between a braggart, somebody who's all they talk about and they're better than everyone. There's such a difference between that attitude and, here's my journey. Here's what I've succeeded at. I'd love to share it with you. There's a way of doing that without being the braggart.
It's a touch of humility, isn't it? Do you think?
Your voice cut out.
Sorry, it's a touch of humility. It's just being a little bit humble about what you've achieved. And not necessarily you're better than everybody else, but just, this is what I've achieved and I can help you and I really want to help you. I think there's a difference in attitude. Do you think? What do you think, Deanna?
Yeah, I do. I think, there's nothing wrong with putting everything out that you've achieved, because people don't know, and they don't know until you tell them. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's okay with that, but you're right. And it's the way that we write it. And when copywriting on a website is different than in print, and a lot of times people don't realize that. So when you're writing on a website, you want to think about that buyer's journey, and you may include that on your about page, and talk about, you want to relate to them. Your ideal client, right? So you already know what their frustration is. So part of your about can talk about how you were frustrated too. Because a lot of the times, not every time, but a lot of the times, we get into the business that we're in because we solved a problem that we had at one point. So sharing part of that could be part of your about me, and it's relatable. It could be relatable to your ideal client, right? And then the solutions that you offer. But it's only one page. And I think when you come off as being really braggy is when that trickles into your social media. And that's all that you talk about is everything that you've done. And it's just a me focus instead of the ideal client focused. Then I think that comes off braggy. But on your About Me page, definitely share it. I mean, share what fits with your business that got you there and how you can solve their problem, because that's what they care about. They don't want to know about you unless you can solve their problem.
Yeah.
Is there any trends or either on the website design or in social media, both, because they both are kind of connected, or any kind of marketing? I'll make it more general. Is there any trends that you have found particularly resonate to the female client, ideal client?
I'm not big on trends. So what I will say is my degree is actually in psychology, and sociology is a minor with biology, right? So would I honestly think, right? And then here I am. But beyond trends, I think what resonates, and not just women, but we'll talk about women, is connecting with them. Like, we're still human at a core, and we want to connect with other people who get us. We want to be seen. We want to know that you see us, that you hear us, and be part of something, right? And that's why Facebook has worked as well as it has, because Facebook makes you part of a community. And first it was just connecting with family, and then you have your groups, right? But people are addicted to Facebook and can't get off of it unless they hop to another social, right? But you've got this whole community that's connected to each other. So when you're talking about how do you connect with other women, I don't really want to connect with every other woman.
Right.
I mean, for me, I'm talking to my ideal client. So I know what that woman looks like. And I know that that woman is a business owner and a small business owner. And I know that she's in that first 10 years of business. I know that she's overwhelmed with her digital marketing. I know that she's ready to level up, but she's doesn't know what to do next, but she's willing to learn. And she's excited to learn. She's in it. She's not ready. She's not going to bail. She's committed to what she's doing. But she's juggling everything else. She might be juggling another job. She might be juggling a family, and she's trying to figure this out in the meantime, right? So it gets time as an issue, and being overwhelmed is an issue. So I know her. So when I talk to her, the things that I'm going to connect with her on are my solutions that I've implemented that would help her, or my frustrations and my struggles that she's like, oh my gosh, she gets me. I'm going to share that things. I'm going to share different pieces of my life that's relatable to her. So, that I think that's always going to work across the board, because it's just the psychology, it's human behavior more than what a trend would be.
Actually, that's a super good point, because sometimes trends actually become irritating. Social media trends.
I'm not dancing to a song. I mean, I might, but I haven't done it yet.
or drinking a cup of coffee. Everyone seems to be drinking.
I did an experiment. This is a couple years ago, but I did an experiment on Reels, because that was when Reels, they were pushing Reels really strong. And I did the stupidest, very poor, not even well done. I did it on purpose. I just did this stupid cat video and made a funny little voice over with a weird voice, and the thing went like crazy. So all the stuff that had value, and I was teaching and educating and sharing, that kind of just, would get views, but minimal. And this one went crazy. And I was like, that told me, yes, it can go crazy, but that's not my ideal client. I don't want the kids that are passing videos and, haha, look how fun, that's not my ideal client. So I don't want to jump on that bandwagon, because my ideal client is not that person. So I'm not talking to the right audience, right?
Absolutely.
The silly cat videos, although it's kind of fun, but so when you're developing,
like Deanna was talking about that the chap whose BBC video went viral because of his daughter ran in. None of us remember what he was talking about. We all remember his wife pulling up her pants and the little girl running in. But yeah, what I was trying to say is it's sometimes not the content that people remember, it's the bits that go around the outside. But as you
The
say,
things that go wrong.
yeah, but that's not your ideal client, and things that you say will resonate with your ideal client, and it won't resonate with people that aren't your ideal client. And actually, you don't want to work with them because they're not your ideal client. So you do kind of filter your clientele by what resonates with the right people for you. And although we all want to sell to everybody, we want to be, millionaires and want to be, but actually what we want to do is have a relationship with our ideal client, and that's the most important thing, isn't it? So it's all about niching down and getting to that ideal
Yes.
ones and twos and threes and fours, not the millions.
Right. Absolutely.
So when you're working with a client and you're curating their website, and there's a few like key images that are super important on a website. And it might include you, it might include the client journey, it might include your team, it might include if you're selling things that's different versus a service. And I know this is kind of a broad question, but what are some of the key photos or images or visual marketing pieces that are critical on a website? And then tell us a little bit about why those are critical.
Well,
Kind of a
there
big
are
question.
a few. Okay. And the one I'm going to start with is first off, I feel you need an image of yourself, especially if you are the face of your brand. If you're not, then you don't. Like, don't worry about it. But people do want to know the face of your brand. And then I definitely recommend that you should have a professional photo taken and not
100%,
have a photo,
definitely.
right? Not a selfie or anything like that. And the reason for that is because, this is your business. You want to look polished. You want it to look professional. And if you put a selfie up there, sure, it might be a great selfie of you, right? But then it also says this is more of a hobby than it is a business for this person, and they could go to the next person. So I am a huge advocate of having professional photos taken of yourself. And I know it gets uncomfortable, but I get mine probably every season, I think. Probably. I get them a lot. And I'm always updating because my hair changes. That's the reality of why. Because my hair has been light, it's been dark, it's been long, it's been short. And that's why I changed my photos.
But you have a very strong visual brand that's very attractive to the right person. So that's one of the reasons why your opinion to me is very important, because you personally are doing this. You take the time and the money and all the other things that are connected to that to present yourself in a very attracting your clients through your visuals.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot. Thank you. Because it does take a lot of time and going back and getting photos, making that time to get photos. And trust me, I hate 90% of the photos that I see of me, right? Because A, I'm a woman, and B, I notice every single flaw. But what's funny, I'm going to share something really funny, then I am going to finish the second part of what photo I think is really important that you need. But just recently, my niece is my photographer who lives in Ohio, right? So she gets me, we have the best time, right? And I think whatever photographer you use, especially for branding shoots, like you want to just have fun, just so your personality comes out in that shoot, because it will. So she sent over the photos, just this last shoot that I did. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this photo. But I put it on Instagram and I did a poll and I did the 4 photos that I thought were okay. All right. And one I liked the least and one I love. The one I love, nobody liked. It was like the least liked. The one I hated, everybody loved. So I'm like, all right, like it wasn't mine, but it's now my current profile picture, right? That wasn't the one I was picking. And it was so funny because then I'm like, they're wrong. I'm going to do it again because,
I actually remember that.
the same exact results, right? So A, that's a fun way to get your audience engaged, just have them pick which photo they like the best of you. And B, it sometimes shows you things that you didn't even realize, right? Because the one that they picked, I could see every flaw of me in it. But they were like, this is such a great picture. Like, I see your personality, like your smile. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'm going to trust you guys on this, right? So it's kind of fun to do that. But the other picture that I really feel that a lot of times when you're getting a branding shoot, it's the one image that seems to get overlooked. And it's called a hero. And it's the very top image at the top of your website. And what ends up happening is that a lot of times you may go and get a photo shoot and all the photos are in portrait and not landscape. Or if they're landscape, you're like right in the middle. Or it's something that like it just doesn't work. So here are some things, right? Like if you're going to get a branding shoot and you're going to design your website, and chances are good after that branding shoot, you want to update your website anyhow with some of these new photos. And if that hero image, that banner on your homepage is something you want to change, think about what are the colors of the words that you have in that section, right? Because when somebody comes to your website, the first thing they want to know is, do you solve my problem? So even though you have this big, beautiful picture of yourself or your product on that homepage, but above the fold, and that's before you start scrolling, that section is above the fold, you want something written on there about how you solve that problem. So maybe it's in the actual photo, right? Or maybe it's more times than not, it's actually written on top of that. So if you have a white background, all white, the words will be black. But if you have a white and black mixed background behind you, now will all the white lettering show? Will all the white lettering, right? So you have to think about this. And then you have to think about the placement. Are you going to be on the right side, on the left side? If you're in the center, the words will probably be over you. And maybe that's okay. Maybe your product is at the bottom and right above it is the words. But kind of think about what you want that to look like before you meet with your photographer. So then you can guide the photographer, because the photographer, I can promise you, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, they're not going to your website and they don't know what you want on your website. They're thinking about how to make these photos of you fit your brand and bring that out. So have an idea before you meet with them. Say, hey, I really would like a photo taken in landscape. It's going to be for my website. Maybe together you pull it up and you can talk it through on what would work. But people miss that all the time.
I think that's the difference between a person who specializes in brand photography and a person who does other photography and just does a branding shoot.
So as a brand photographer, do you already know that? Do you look into that?
Absolutely. That's part of the
that's awesome.
First.
Oh my gosh, that's great. I didn't know that. Okay.
You brand audit, you see what they're doing, what they're missing in their website, what kind of pictures could fill in gaps for them. So you have all that figured out before you walk through the door.
That is
You have a shot list and, there's strategy behind it. So it's not the same depending on what the person is if they do families and weddings and will shoot then most likely they're going to miss that stuff.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. That does make a lot of sense.
I'm
glad you do that. I'm glad you shared that, right? Because I didn't realize that brand photographers actually take a look at all that, because it's so important. So important. I can't tell you how many times I will get pictures for the hero image and it's a portrait photo. I'm like, do you realize that your face is going to be 10 feet tall and like your body's not seen because you are putting a portrait in this hero?
Yeah, and you
You
have to shoot to leave text for copy. You specifically will put somebody in the frame to allow for possible copy. You do that on purpose.
And that's actually lots of fun too, right? So like I have old ones with a different hairstyle. And I literally was like up against a wall and just kind of putting my hands off to the side so that I could put words in an actual, like a social media post about what I'm doing right there. And it was a lot of fun. I've used that so many times in the past. Or you just point up, right? And you leave white space. Yeah, whatever, right? So then you can fill in with words and you can use it for social media. So yeah, thinking ahead, I have an album in my phone that is all photos that I like and that I want. And then I'm like, oh, I like that. I like this. I like this. And I'll screenshot them, save them. I put them in an album. And then when I meet with my niece, I'm like, hey, here's all the things I like, or I'll send it to her beforehand, so she has an idea of what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I
because it
do the same
changes.
thing with Pinterest boards so
Yes,
that the client
yes.
can kind of go in there and go, okay, this is the vibe or this is the feel I want. We don't necessarily
Hmm.
mimic the pictures, but we
Right.
will take the emotion from the pictures. What are you trying?
Yes.
And then, put it into that person's service or whatever. So those
So
visuals help
important.
photographers. So if you're listening and you have one, show them what you are looking for, and then it will be much easier for them to give you what you need. Okay, so based on your own experience, well, actually, you just said it. I'm looking at my question. It says, based on your own experience, what are the benefits of a personal brand session or photography session that provides you with a bank of visual marketing
Mm.
assets? So it's kind of the same. You mentioned the benefits, but what about the fact that when you go, I don't know if this sounds like this is how you do it because your niece is in, another state.
She's in Ohio. Yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of, once a year or whatever, you go and you shoot for several hours, probably have fun, change a lot of clothes, just have a ball and probably different settings, etc. But then that gives you a huge amount of material to work for the next year.
Yes.
So does that solve for you? Are you stressed about what you're going to use for pictures for your marketing?
Oh, no, not at all. And I actually have somebody who helps with my social media. And no, I have this on Google Drive. I have a folder. It's called branding. And then every album that I have is like branding shoot this year or month and year, because I do go back. I probably get photos 2 or 3 times a year. And I mean, because you're going to use them. And like, it's such a time saver to know that you have these photos and that you can just pull from them. I will tell you, there are times I go through my phone still, right? I'm like, I need a photo and I want it to be, a little bit more of a personal post. And I'll go through my photos and I'm like, oh, I still like the professional ones. Like they're just better. It looks more polished. So having that whole database of branded photos of me, and not only just me, it's not just, more times than not it's me in the photo, right? But sometimes it's my phone and my laptop. It's the tools that I use in my business. And I can change those up and I could rotate them and keep using them. And I think there's a huge value there because your brand always looks polished. So I highly recommend getting a branding shoot. If you've not done it before, ask for Christmas or something. Go get one done. Because I do realize, right? And I'm going to say this too, because I know I have gotten emails from people because they see that they know I get branded photo shoots. So they will reach out and they will say, do you know a branding photographer? Or do you know a photographer who can get photos? And I say, there are a lot of photographers out there. I would definitely research them first, look at their photos on their Instagram or their Facebook or their website to make sure that their style aligns with you and what you want, because there's a lot of different ones. And then I had somebody reach out because I did recommend someone and they said, well, I did reach out to that person, but they start at this price. Listen, there's a cost that goes into it. It's not just the time they take to take the picture, then they go back and edit it. And yes, there's a cost. You can go and hire a photographer that will do it for free or, $100. And there's nothing wrong with that, but the quality is going to be different, right? And there may be a new photographer. So if you're a new photographer, I am not saying like don't use them, because they may be trying to build their brand portfolio and be very, very talented. But if you're reaching out to a photographer who's established, yes, there's a cost to that. And you shouldn't be afraid to spend that money, because those photos will go such a long way. You will be using them for years and years to come in your marketing, on social media, on your website, in your newsletters, in your email, like everything you do, you're going to use it. So invest in your business, invest in yourself. And like I said, if your budget isn't there, if you're just starting out and you're like, gosh, I can't really invest in that, ask for it as a Christmas gift and have somebody else invest in your business for you for a minute.
Love that
Yeah,
idea.
and I'm going to ask another question because I know you are a mentor, business for marketing and other strategies. And I know Miriam is a coach, a life coach. So she helps people with a lot of those inner struggles that prevent us from being able to move forward in our business or in our life for that matter. So how would you say that is helpful to other business entrepreneurs? That process of, I have mentors, I'm embarrassed to, I won't even say, but I'm embarrassed how much money I've put into that in the last few years in terms of my own business, because I knew I needed knowledge that I didn't have. And I know knowledge is just a matter of going and getting it. So it's not a stop. It's just, I have work to do. So I've hired a whole bunch of mentors in the last few years from all different genres: marketing, brand photography, strategy, all kinds of stuff. So I knew I needed much more knowledge than I had at that moment. So this was several years ago. So I see the value, and you are both doing this. So you see the value. But for our audience, again, it's another expense, right? We see, oh, I have to pay. But what is the value that that money is providing from getting a business mentor, getting a mentor that helps you with some of the psychological, emotional issues that you might be struggling with? What is the value that you have seen in your clients?
It's invaluable. And there's a couple ways to go about this. And when I first started out a long time ago, and I'm going to go back to before it was the digital marketing agency, last week I shared my early start, and I was baking out of my kitchen, right? And I was on the news, and I had a gentleman who I had known who owned several franchises of an ice cream shop all over the United States. And he called me up and said, get in my office. And so I was like, okay. I was literally leaving the news station, went to his office. He said, I want to mentor you. And I'm like, okay. And even though that business didn't continue, the information I learned from him, the things he taught me, I still think of today. I still go back to that. Because of that, I recognize the value of having a mentor or a coach. And if you're in the early stage of your business and you really can't, I think we've all been there. We're like, I just really can't invest in a mentor. There may be somebody who will mentor you at no cost, or there's organizations like SCORE that they have people that will help mentor you. But I do encourage you that once you get to the place where you can invest to hire a coach or a mentor, it's invaluable. And the reason that it's so invaluable is because it saves you time, which is money, and frustration. A lot of times you're like, you might be spinning your wheels to go left. And in reality, you should be putting it to go right. And they're going to recognize that and say, wait a minute, stop. They're also going to challenge you to think bigger than what you might be thinking. At least this happened to me, right? Because I would walk into my first mentor's office and I would feel like a rock star, right? Because I'm like, oh, I got on the front page of our local newspaper and this is happening and business is growing. And then he'd start asking me questions. And I was like, I didn't think of that. I never didn't think of that, So he saw and thought bigger than I did, which at that time, okay, I always keep it real. I was like clinging to my comfort zone. I did not want to let go of my comfort zone and listen to him because it was really uncomfortable to think big for me at that point. But obviously I learned how to overcome that. But I have always had a mentor or a coach with me, and that has guided me. It could be a friend, but you definitely need to have somebody with you the whole time.
I think you're absolutely right, and it is that recognizing the value of that to not only you as a business owner, but actually sometimes you as a person, that you just need someone that can help you, that can question you, so that you do kind of look further than just what's right in front of you at that time.
We had a little technical difficulty if that question got cut off a little short. But we have one more question for you. Can you share one piece of advice that has helped you the most in your business advice? So it's advice somebody gave you that has really been like super important to you as a business owner and moving forward through your challenges.
Yeah, it's actually just one statement, and it's, why not me? Why not me? I mean, a lot of times we think we find it easy that other people find success, but we don't think it's possible for us for whatever reason that may be. And we get in our own way. But why not you? Why not me? You can absolutely achieve anything you want to achieve. You are in complete control. Nobody else has control over that.
That's excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us and sharing with us your expertise and your
thanks,
experiences.
Well, thank you,
What'd you
guys.
say,
This was
Mary?
so much fun. 2 weeks in a row. I love it.
Yes.
It's great.
Thank you.
Really
Thank
good.
you. And we will see you again.
Yes. Sounds great. Thank you,
We'll
guys.
hear you again.
See you next episode. After all, it is your brand, your story, and your success. Because Ariel and I know you matter in your business.
Thank you for listening to the You Matter in Business podcast. Please follow, share, like, and comment. We would love to hear from you. This podcast is sponsored by Ariel Faith Photography and Enrich Life Coaching. The show notes provide more information on how to contact Ariel and Miriam and any guest speakers who share in our journey together.